Runic Echoes doesn't give as much. Because with Runic Echoes, your attack speed is only about 1 per second. Whereas with Water Razor, it goes up to 1.3. So that's the difference between hitting someone 3 times compared to like 4 times instead. Additionally, on a target with even just 2000 HP, Water Razor is going to be doing 60 on-hit damage, which over 4 hits is going to go up to 240. Even with the 60 ability power given by Runic Echoes, it's still nowhere near enough to compete with that. And the 60 plus 0.1 AP bonus magic damage also isn't enough to compete with that because that's only a one-time burst. You would need an immense amount of AP before that would even begin to compete. Hey, welcome to the stream. So, with that established, we can just assume Devourer in both cases. And now we just want to see which build path provides the best gold per damage ratio. Notably, the lower the ratio, the better it is. A lower gold per damage ratio is more efficient for the items you can get. In our current implementation of the Jungle Lulu build, we calculated that it was efficient to go into the order of... I'm so used to my guides being at the top of the list. Or top of the Google results, I mean. We found the best gold per damage ratio started with Nashor's Tooth into Blade of the Ruined King into Wit's End. Then into either Gumos or Void Staff. But things have changed. The new Ginsu's Rage Blade, that was recently updated, adds different stats and has the Ginsu's Rage passive that used to belong to Devourer. So with that noted, if you already have the Blood Razor, can Ginsu's now compete reliably with all of these other choices? Well, let's find out. Let's start off by throwing in the first item, which is Nashor's Tooth. One Nashor's Tooth has a gold per damage efficiency of 6.5. One Stinger has a gold per damage efficiency of 3.1, which is basically impossible to beat, I think. Blade of the Ruined King is 6.0. Void Staff is 6.1. These are all getting roughly equivalent, actually. Umos goes to 5.8, which makes it even more efficient than the other options. Wit's End is 5.5, and Ginsu's goes to 5.4. So Ginsu's Rage Blade can bring you up to 671 damage over 3 seconds, compared to Nashor's 460 damage. Additionally, Ginsu's is significantly more effective, but this is also at maximum stacks. You would have to hit a target 6 times before any of this became. So if we believe that to be the case, and if we got rid of Ginsu's Rage passive for you, the deep damage over 3 seconds goes to 519, which is now a gold per damage ratio of 6.9, which is pretty bad. Because you can instead have Nashor's, which is a 6.5 gold for damage efficiency, without having to stack it at all. Additionally, in 3 seconds, you would only be able to auto-attack about 4 times, so even assuming a best case scenario of, say, having Ginsu's ready, hit them with, as a first item, you would only be able to stack it up 4 times. You wouldn't get the double on-hit passive in time. Water Poly. And you wouldn't be able to deal as much damage as other options like Nashor's. However, it doesn't seem like Nashor's is the most efficient. Wit's End actually seems to be. But I think this is one case where we can still reliably want a Nashor's anyway because that cooldown reduction is just so delicious. Right? A 20% cooldown reduction is a pretty big deal. For a build like this where you're constantly zooming around and trying to polymorph people. I also think this is assuming a Wit's End best case scenario is understanding. I'm trying to see if I calculated for the armor shred somewhere. I probably did. I think I assumed like 15. Or I should have anyway. Yeah, that's weird. Why don't I account for that? Oh yeah, I should. AC 130. Oh, that's because I don't. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it counts for Magic Shred. It accounts for Magic Shred. So we're already counting for the Magic Shred when we say that. This isn't even a best case scenario for Wit's End. It just is like flat out better than Nashor's Teeth. So really it comes down to like to what extent do we value the cooldown reduction? Because Nashor's Tooth is only a little bit less effective than Wit's End. 6.5 compared to 5.5. 2,800 gold. 3,000. So 460 damage over 3 seconds compared to 570. So you're only getting a 40 damage boost. Are we willing to give up 40 damage in order to get 40 damage and 200 gold? Are we willing to give up 40 damage and 200 gold in order to get 20% coin? I would say yes. Like, that sounds like a pretty good deal. And realistically, you can probably use your spells in order to get that extra eternity damage in another way. Wit's End can also ramp up a little bit higher, but I'd still say probably, like, at the very least they're comparable, and in the cases of comparableness, you should probably prefer Nashor's Tooth instead. So if we put in the Nashors into our build right now, everything looks identical, so that means it's working. Then we go over to the next most efficient item. Previously, the next most efficient was Blade of the Ruined King. So let's see if that remains the case. If we add Ginsu's in, it goes to 6.7. With Lich Bane, it's 11.2. Ill. Blade of the Ruined King goes to 7.9. Void Staff goes to 9.5. Yumo's goes to 8.3, and Wit's End goes to 8.3 as well. Ginsu's a 6.7, but what happens if we remove that doubled on hit effect modifier like last time? If we try Ginsu's Den without that, like this is assuming, you know, you're not at maximum stacks, it goes up to 9.6 instead. 9.6 doesn't compete with 8.3, given by like pretty much everything else. Well, what we can see here is that when Ginsu's is maximally stacked, it now actually competes in efficiency with the other items, when previously that wasn't the case. Blade of the Ruined King, however, doesn't seem to be much better than Ginsu's, after you, even assuming you take out the double to on-hit modifier, since it turns to 9.6 versus 7.9. Plus Ginsu's is like way more expensive. Blade of the Ruined King used to be more efficient though, but that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. AC 130, yeah, only 40. It's in. Yeah, it's still 40. Okay, okay. So I think part of what makes Blade of Ruin King not as efficient is that we're now using actual values. Correct, Mesmo. That's how it's calculated. So like, we already figured that Nashor's is the best item to start with, so now we already have it accounted for. Next, we add on our next item by just placing the S onto here. This is what I meant by, like, as soon as you establish the infrastructure for this thing, it becomes significantly faster to test out various builds very quickly, without having to, like, create, like, 5 contingencies in order to test them out. It's way more efficient this way. I actually did that before Kale, like a long time ago when I was optimizing ADC Kale. As you can see, instead I had to just go like 2 items, then 3 items, then 4 items, 5, 6. You have like 20 different contingencies. When instead you can just have yes and no's, which makes things significantly easier. In any case, I'd have to say that with only 1.61 attack speed, Gensus is probably still not worth it quite yet. You can still stack it pretty fast now. Over 3 seconds, 1.6 auto attacks translates to... So you can attack about 5 times by the time. That's almost enough for Gensus Rage, but not quite. In that case, I think that we end up preferring Wit's End, which has the better efficiency. Well, Yumos competed pretty well with it too. In fact, Yumos has the same efficiency as Wit's End, in fact. Yeah, that might have something to do with it, Mesmo. Is like, because Wit's End shreds, it stacks onto Nashor's really nicely, which like helps them both amplify each other, which makes it even more valuable. But what we're seeing here is that Yumos and Wit's End are roughly about the same. So my question is, like, if we pick one, yeah, see, they're almost exactly identical. But actually, we should prefer Wit's End because Yumos is 400 gold more expensive by comparison. But Yumos doesn't just give the exact same amount of damage, though. Yumos gives more damage. Whereas a Mallet wouldn't be good. You don't have trouble polymorphing people until you kill them. This is for Jungle Lulu. So, Wit's End and Yumos would be... Will it some of none? That's what I'm wondering. Let's try out that. Let's test that theory. We're going to have one path have Yumos and one have Wit's End. And then, this is where we're going to add one Blade of the Ruined King here and here. The one of Yumos is only very slightly less efficient. What happens if we add in a Gensus then? They also are both roughly identical, actually. So it looks like it doesn't matter in which particular order you build Wits or Yumos. It doesn't really impact your Gensus or your Blade of the Ruined King either. So let's test out, and let's say they both are Yumos. Let's test Gensus against Blade of the Ruined King. At this point, you have 2.16 attack speed. You can easily get off 6 auto attacks in 3 seconds and get Gensus Rage to be able to hit even harder. So I think, as a third item, regardless of whether you get Blade of the Ruined King or, whether you get Wit's End or Yumos, it's then best to get a Gensus instead. Like, regardless of the order that you get them in. Again, shown here because they both have about the same efficiency. And then if we add on the other counterparts, that's weird. They have exactly the same items, right? So they should be exactly the same. I think something's up. Something's up, y'all. There's a mistake in the code. They all look the same. Well, you can already get attack speed in other ways. Also, the burst damage from those don't seem to add anywhere near as much by comparison. Hello, Myron. Welcome to the stream. Ah, I see where it is. I see. 135. Okay, we have to redo a little bit of this. Not a whole bunch. Just a little bit. It's because the damage reduction on physical wasn't being accounted for in the bottom row. So we're backing up to Nashers and then back to Ginsu's. Just stay there for a moment. We'll get back to you. So Wits End and Yomos is where we were at. Yomos and Wits End still are like identical. If we put Yomos down here, that also remains true. That's it. Good. Yep. Then you get Ginsu's. So Ginsu's after Yomos is more efficient than Ginsu's after Wits End. This would seem to imply that we should prefer the Ginsu's one. I mean, no, after Wits End, Ginsu's is better. Like, that's a, not only is it 400 gold cheaper, but you are dealing 147 more damage in the same frame of time. So it's no contest, Wits End is better as a second item, if you're going to get Ginsu's as a third item. Which I think at this point is fair, because you have 2.16 attack speed, making it work pretty well for being able to stack quickly. So at that point, what if we wanted to add Ginsu's? I mean, what if we wanted to add Yomos? Would it be able to compete with these other items? You have a 6.1 efficiency, which is still really, really good, versus Bladed Ruin King, which is a 5.1 efficiency. Bladed Ruin King also has some tank busting properties to it that Yomos Ghostblade does not have. But these aren't the only contenders, are they? We have Void Staff, which we've neglected. 6.3, which is also pretty terrible. Lichbane is still terrible, it's always been for Jungle Lulu. We've established that in a previous video. So Bladed Ruin King just wins out here. Over Void Staff, over Lichbane, over everything. And finally, with these items established, between Yomos and Void Staff, you have one item slot left. Void Staff gets you to 4.9, and Yomos gets you to 5.0, with roughly identical 3-second damage outputs. So it seems like it's a fifth item you can choose between Void Staff or Yomos fairly reliably. Actually, I think we had that here also. This verifies what we figured out the previous time. The only difference, I think, is that you have Nashers into Wits End, into Ginsu's, into Bladed Ruin King. But no, you don't have a 6th item, do you? Because you have your first item taken up by here. In which case, you have no reason to ever get Yomos or Void Staff, because they are both always less gold per damage efficient compared to the other alternatives. You don't get to go down this far. The 4 item build path is just Nashers, Wits End, Ginsu's, and Bladed Ruin King. Because there's not enough slots for it. If you had a 7th slot, you would be able to choose between either Bladed Ruin King or Void Staff, but you can't. So instead, you just have these. But let me see what happens if I replace that Bladed Ruin King with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No more ain't there anymore. Let's just compare the damage outputs, raw damage outputs. If your final item is Bladed Ruin King, how does its raw damage output compare? Because as you approach late game, your gold per damage doesn't matter anymore, right? Like, being gold efficient doesn't matter. Boots are already accounted for. Oh, right, boots. We have to toss those in a moment. I'll do that momentarily. So, instead of Bladed Ruin King, this one is Void Staff, which has a damage output about 600 less. And if you get Yomos instead, that has a damage output about 500 less, which makes Bladed Ruin King superior not only in gold per damage, but also in a 3-second damage output. Next, we compare Berserks against Sorcerer Shoes. And we see that Sorcerer Shoes basically win out every time. But on the other hand, these can't account for, being able to use Ginsu's and being able to proc it even a little bit faster. Although you start hitting diminishing returns at this point. Even if you put this at 2.5 though, it's still, not that much of a difference. You get a lot more attack speed when you have Ginsu. And you're able to reach the 2.5 identifier mark. That's true. If we, instead of going for AS, we go for Magic Penetration, what does that look like? You have 2.41. But AS runes are still going to be doing superior damage. 2,812 on AS, 2,749 on Magic Penetration. Which I think makes sense because, attack speed is going to benefit every item you have, whereas Magic Penetration is only part of your fairly minuscule burst compared to the amount of damage your on hits and auto attacks. I think that gives us the information we need. Nashor's, Wit's End, Ginsu's, Blade of the Ruined King is the optimal gold per damage out pathway that you can have. Nashor's being the only exception, but the 20% CDR is something that can't be quantified by a chart like this. And that means that Void Staff and Yumo's Ghostblade are no longer in the build anymore. For a previous contender when Ginsu used to be terrible, but Ginsu is now actually fairly good for jungle.